Welcome to the Influence Factory podcast. This program is dedicated to support professionals who have a desire to develop their digital business influence so they can navigate through a fast-paced, constantly growing digital world. We invite newcomers as well as our family of business influencers to a place to play, share ideas, questions, tips, and guidance with other thought leaders around the globe. Sit back and enjoy our program with your host, Dean DeLisle, as he interviews guests. News and commentary are provided by Jackson DeLisle and Monica Hacker. Power Move lessons are provided by the Influencer Marketing Department at Social Jack. And production, editing, and distribution is provided by the Social Jack production team.
All right, today's show is brought to you by Planable. Planable.io gives your social media team everything they need to really move their creative process forward. It allows you to preview social media posts as they are live, real time. No more screenshots, mock-ups, spreadsheets. Your clients can review content from within the platform. And do you have anything to say about it, Monica?
It's a great platform. We've been using it now for a month. I love it. It's a game changer in the content world. I highly suggest it.
Yeah, go to Planable, Planable.io to start your free trial today. All right, welcome to another episode of the Influence Factory. We are in episode 84, and this is an improv-based episode. We have a special guest with us today that's kicking off the show, Michael Visione. How you doing? I know I want to say A, but it's Visione.
Yes, right? It is. I'm doing well, though. How are you?
Good, man. Good. And we were just, we're cracking up before the show because both of you are in the same improv group, and we'll get to that in a minute. But that picture behind you is in my very home, and I've never seen it anywhere else before. And then you appear on camera, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Michael's in my house, but you aren't.
I am not, unfortunately, but never say never.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We'll have to have him at Camp DeLisle sometime, huh, Jackson?
Definitely. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So this is a very special episode because I have the pleasure, coincidentally, tomorrow, I am meeting with Tom Yorton, who is well-known, and Kenny Leonard from the book, Yes, And. It's a business book on improv from Second City. And Jackson, did you guys start in the same class at Second City?
No, we started actually. So we started taking the same curriculum, but we met in level C, right? Yeah. Okay. So level C, it was like 2 or 3 people from my original level A, and then the rest of everyone else had been together since level A or B. And then I came in, and then that was when we started performing in class. We had end of class shows, and then we were like, well, we like doing it. We might as well see if we're good. And then we did the improv competition with no expectations at all. We were just out of level C, we just had finished level D and did the improv competition. And then we won a 3-week show run. So that was like kind of what started the ball rolling on making it bigger than just a class that meets once a week. So.
Yeah. And, what's interesting is, we talk a lot about in business about improv and utilization of improv, and we'll get to some of that here shortly. But when I noticed on your shows, and I know you had a certain setup for the show, but even though you did a 3-show run, what was cool, it's almost like theater, but it's even more different is that it changes every time, which I think is super cool. So even if you go to like 2 shows, you're not going to see the same stuff.
Yeah. And that's like, it's a super pro, and it's also super con because every show is completely different. But like if my mom or my brother happens to miss a show and they're like, what happened? And it's so hard to explain. Like, today I was a bus driver that happened to run over 6.5 cows. And if I have a cow out there, I don't understand, but it's so hard explaining to people like what I did during the show or how my group did during the show. It's just like, you literally have to be there or I can't tell you anything.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's that's what I love about it. So, we're going to dig into some business, cool business parallels here. and some real life parallels here too. But first and foremost, so Jackson, most of our audience knows you that, obviously they've met you at events or they've seen you on some of our broadcast. And for us, you do a lot of digital marketing. You're a speaker, a trainer, and a coach. And then you also help out with production. You run a lot of these productions and other productions that we do. And then you and I succeeded our 3rd degree black belt in mixed martial arts. And what's interesting is they always want us to go for our 4th, but not sure if we'll ever do that. And then one other cool thing is that, well, I don't know if it's cool, but I thought it was impressive, is that you did a performance with 103 fever and strep throat. So I was like, whoa, okay, so he's still going on, right?
Michael Jordan flu game right there.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what we think about. And then
it was a choir
Michael,
performance too, so it was like strictly vocal.
I know. I don't know how you did it.
It was for a grade. If I skipped it, they wouldn't have let me redo it. So I was like, well, I'm not failing.
Right. And then, Michael, I have to thank you because you have served our country in the United States Air Force like my dad. So thank you for serving, for sure.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And when did you leave the Air Force?
I actually finished up in March of 19.
Okay.
So.
And now you're going to school to be a fine teacher and contribute to our education system.
That's right. Absolutely.
Cool. Now you cooked for celebrity chef Robert Irvine. How did that happen?
So when I was stationed in Korea, they pretty much voluntold me because they look for, I guess, energetic people. And I happen to be one of them. And they were like, hey, do you want to do this cooking competition for celebrity chef Robert Irvine? And I said, I guess so. And so I happened to do it. And it was like, they did like a hidden recipe thing. So you could only use a certain amount of items to cook. And I made him a pineapple glazed chicken, and he took a bite of it and he said it wasn't bad. So
There you go.
Exactly.
And I want to talk about rugby for just a minute, and then we'll get into some improv as Jackson's tweeting. I can always tell when he's tweeting. You can see the reflection in your glasses. It's a giveaway.
I'm sorry.
No. It's all good, man. So with rugby, I was with a client, and he said, well, my son is, playing away at college, and he's playing rugby. And I go, really? Why rugby? Because I knew he played football. Well, he goes, first of all, he got in a lot of trouble when he was playing football. So I said, okay, I know a lot of football players that get in trouble, right? I was a football player, a wrestler, etc. And so I said, well, why rugby? He said, well, football player, it's always, there's a lot of confrontation. It's like, the other team is always the enemy. And he goes, what always drove me nuts is he said, you've got these players on the field, and then you've got some on the sidelines that will get to play, but there's many players that never get to play unless someone gets injured or it's circumstantial. So he said in rugby, it's such a physical ongoing game that everyone gets to play, and there's always a shot where somebody can make a play or get the ball. So everybody has an opportunity to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd never heard it said like that before.
Yeah, well, and the thing, because you're talking about football and just like team A and team B just absolutely hating each other. It's crazy with rugby because like we might hate each other for the moment on the field, but like the social parties are just like getting together after the rugby matches afterwards. It's absolutely insane. Like it's a crazy brotherhood that like I guess all rugby players just have with each other, and it's super cool to just come together with like complete strangers that you just beat up on, or like you just cracked open his head or broke his finger or whatever. I'm only saying that because I witnessed it, and I was the one actually happened to get my finger broken during the match. But it's super cool, like the coming together of the mean, like looking disgusting rugby guys.
And he said that. He said at the end, he goes, the home team, at least in his experience, typically hosts the party. And he goes, everybody's arm in arm after the match. nobody hates anybody and everybody parties together. And I just thought, I'd never heard of that before, but I was like, wow, that's sort of like in business, we try to build a community. And even though we'll bump heads and not agree and things like that, at the end of the day, we all want to get along and help each other and work together. And I said, wow, that's almost like a business community of how you want, in rugby, you fight for each other, you fight against the enemy or you go up against the enemy. But at the end of the day, if you're collaborative, it all works out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's literally how it was. So, it was super cool because I was playing in South Korea and we just traveled all throughout South Korea, but really we met people from all over the world that were playing. And it was just, everybody was welcoming with like open arms. It was amazing.
Yeah. So you and Jackson just completed, I guess do they call it graduated from Second City or like complete?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say graduation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we graduated the program. So like they have tons of programs. They have improv for business, improv for, like people with anxiety, improv for, different levels for where you're at and what you want to utilize it for. We were just like improv for making people laugh. Which is just their normal improv one. But it's not like it was level A through E. We did it for 9 months or?
Yeah, we started in January and just finished up. So,
10 months because we graduated on the 27th, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it felt like
it did. It definitely did. So we did that, and now we have like degrees. For lack of a better term, we have a piece of paper that says we're funny.
Yeah, and I saw it on the fridge. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, you don't even have to think we're funny. We have physical evidence that we're funny.
So I've got to ask you this because one of the things as much as I remembered, I forgot. And I'm a lot older than you guys, and I used to hang out at the old Second City on Wells, and we'd go down there and run into some of these folks from time to time as they were progressing in their careers. But I looked on I don't even know if it's the Wall of Fame, but just all the pictures of everybody that's gone through there. And what's interesting is I didn't realize that so many people came from Second City and made it big, if you will. So and a lot of times, Jackson, as we're traveling and our, going through in our travels, somebody's ringing.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That happens. That's just like when you're shooting a movie, just burn the film. So it's like, okay, we'll just retake that.
Thank God for editors.
Yes, right. So in doing that, we have, a lot of people that came through there. But if I were going to ask you, like Michael and then Jackson, like Michael, who are 3 people that as you're going through or you go on stage or you're getting ready to warm up, who do you think of? Do you model after anybody? Do you think of anybody that's sort of been your role model in there?
I am probably one of the biggest, like it's going to be a plain answer because he's so big and especially around Second City, but I'm one of like the biggest Steve Carell fans out there. And I've watched just about every interview he's ever done. And he would talk about it with Second City and also like doing his if he's trying to get a role for a movie. I kind of use the same mindset. So if he's going into an audition for a movie, his mindset is pretty much, if this doesn't go well, then guess what? I have to go back to my wife and kids. And like,
tell them I failed.
Exactly. Yeah. Like what a rough life that is. And I use that mindset as well. Like I'm going on stage and, whether it goes well or not, it's not a life or death matter. Like I'm still going to go home to my same apartment. I'll see my brother and no matter what, like our class would get drinks afterwards. So it's nothing crazy. But if I would definitely say Steve Carell, Ryan Stiles and Colin Mockery from Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh yeah.
Had a huge influence and they were both in Second City, Toronto. So they're definitely my 3 for sure.
Yeah. And Jackson, as we were traveling, I didn't realize like there's a Second City Hollywood, right? And
yeah.
And there's obviously no Second City in the first city. So there's Second City, Toronto and Chicago. Is that the only 3 that we know of? Or?
Yeah. Well, they had one in Amsterdam for a little while, but I don't know that they
Too many
kept it
people got
running.
arrested.
No, too many people. They were just high, couldn't keep it running. You know. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
I have no idea why they didn't keep it running. It's just not advertised on their site if it is still running.
Right.
But I know for like a short while they did have an Amsterdam location. I know, and then Groundlings tends to be a little bit the bigger one on the West Coast, and on the East Coast they have UCB.
Right. And ideally it's the feeder technically for other comedy as well as SNL, you know.
Yeah.
Realm, if you will.
Yes.
Now today, Netflix and all the other stuff. So for you, who's the three that stand out for you?
I would say, I mean, Chris Farley is a huge one. I mean, just I've you know, like you hear people that like worked with him and stuff that like they just like rave he was such a good person, so humble. And I feel like that's something that's huge in the entertainment business is there's a lot of people that are like, you know, like not humble about their work.
Yeah.
And I feel like I never want to be perceived as someone that is like, well, I'm at Second City. Like, you know what I mean? Like I never want to, it's like, yeah, this is what I do. And I love doing this and I love making people laugh. But I feel like that mentality of being like humble and easy to work with and always being able to take notes and criticism and being like, okay, and then pivot from that. I feel like that's a great way to be. And then, you know, the other, you know, legends that came from there, like Bill Murray and John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, those, I would say my top three, Chris Farley, John Belushi, and Bill Murray.
Right.
Just because, you know, and like, I mean, I've heard stories recently come up that Bill Murray was a little difficult to work with in some cases. But I mean, other than that, you know, he's just a super funny guy when he gets on stage. So like, I'm always like calling from the, you know, from the legends, you know what I mean? I'm like, give me the strength.
Well, and how is it? You know, I always wonder this because it's uncertainty. And before we went on the air, Michael, I was telling you how, like, even in my talk the other night, and a lot of my talks, even though I have slide decks and I have a way that it's going to start, I begin interacting with the audience ahead of time, much like you guys do when you go out there. And then I work from that energy or that angle of who they're from. And so I'm inspired by how you guys come out and do that, and not knowing, like, you don't even know what the topics. I mean, you sort of know the framework, but not the topics. So how is it warming up for when I see you guys at the Second City?
Go ahead, Jackson.
So you mean just like when we warm up before there's an audience?
Yeah, is there something you do? Is there a ritual, a routine, a thing? Is it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we always play like the original. The OG games, like, you know, like Zip Zap Zop. But then we do it with a twist because Twisted Lime. And then we, you know, we'll add other things in there. We do a lot of yes anding games to keep out of like that negative like mindset, because you have to keep yes anding things no matter what. Otherwise, if you say but no, that automatically stops the scene right in its tracks, and it makes it harder to push forward and build on it, because it's now like, okay, we're switching gears now. And like, if you really want to switch gears, I mean, there's ways around it. Like if you want to cut it short, there's tag outs, sweeps, all that stuff, which sweep is just running in front of it. And
so tell us a little bit, for those of us that don't know improv, because I just got a hold of this book and Nancy came on late, but Nancy's the one that actually gave me the book, and we're meeting with Tom tomorrow. But yes, and what is that? What is that?
It's basically like, well, to get back to your last question real quick. Yeah. I think the coolest ritual that we have before that, like literally I could be like sweating bullets and like going, you know, like, oh, I'm not feeling well. This is like, I could be like in that 103-degree fever stage, and we all take the time and go, I've got your back. Every single one of us, we hug, we high five. I got your back. Joe and I usually do a chest bump, and then we do another one when we get on stage.
And Michael has an eye roll.
And then we kind of like try and figure out, we like grab someone, we're like, hey, let's do this funny when we walk on stage for like the big high energy entrance. And it's all about getting the energy up right before you go on stage, because if you go out and you're like, you know what I mean? It's like, the audience gives you what you give them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you want high energy, it's.
Yeah, no, that's 100% accurate. And like Jackson, we've seen, and I mean, our team is in no way perfect. Like every performance is not perfect, but we've seen teams come out with like super low energy. And it's just like, well,
like teams that we know are really good.
Yeah.
Like, cause we know people on, the other teams will go see them. And like, it's that decision of like, the energy aspect. And I think that's like the biggest thing. Like, honestly, I don't think it's about being funny at all. I think it's about just like making yourself look like an idiot and like having the biggest energy and just committing to every decision you make on stage.
Yeah.
The hardest thing I would say is probably remembering the things that you commit to, because a lot of times, like not necessarily in games, because games are super short. That's like short form. And then you have long form, which is like when we get like 1 or 2 suggestions and then we go for like 30 minutes and then we just keep tagging, switching, and like the timeline increases. But like, let's say I was like an old grandfather in like the first one, and then I come back, but now I'm a kid, and then I come out into scene, but then I'm like, oh wait, hold on, wait, what were my, like 4 characters and walk-ons that I've played? And it's like, which one am I going to pick for this one? So usually just the one I can remember on the spot.
So there's a setup and there's an improv to it, right? So there's like a framework.
Yeah.
There's definitely a method to the madness. But like we said earlier, it's obviously not scripted at all. And you could be any character in any given time.
Yeah, I know. And that's, I play in my head so many scenarios where that could be useful, as well as I think of the synergy that I see on stage, and I'm like, wow, I think companies would love to have that as part of their culture of where they work. And Jackson, you work in different environments with events with us and things like that. And then Michael, you have 2 jobs in school going on right now, so I'm sure you see some of that around there. So what's interesting is how you, and I don't even know how you do it, but how you know when to play off of one another, and how, and I'm sure it's just some practice too. But it's like, how do you know, like just to work from each other and not cut each other off all the time, It's pretty amazing.
So I would say 80% of improv is listening. And then and then the other half is just reacting to what you just heard. So, we learned that in, I guess, level A and level B, they hammer listening, because if someone walks on stage and they're talking about their coffee and you go and say, how's your Red Bull? It completely throws away the scene.
Yeah. Right. Because it's like, well, I think a lot of it is you can be a strong improviser individually, but like, I would say that all of us have a decent set of skills, and we will find you. And no, I'm just kidding. But we could literally I think it's all about having that team mentality of like even if I don't have an idea, but like there's only one dude on stage sitting there sipping his coffee, like Michael said, like our instinct is to literally just jump out and figure out what he's doing to the best of our abilities and try and match whatever fits in that scene. And basically, like that goes back to like our ritual of being like, I've got your back, which essentially just means like, if you look like a fool out there, we all look like fools out there together. Like that, if one of us goes down, we all go down. But like the more, I don't know, I feel like the more stupid you make yourself on stage, like the harder it is to fail, because you go into that mentality of like, even if this goes poorly, like we already have a second show scheduled and we will do it better next time. And then people like, I don't know, it's kind of like, because we do the same stuff with the same amount of energy and the same amount of like just making ourselves look stupid.
Well, I think though, hold on. I think, because when I was reading part of this book, it was talking about being unafraid to just let go and be authentic
and like do whatever, like not well. Okay, so it's not necessarily the first thing that comes to your mind, because they do think of they do A to C thinking, right? Or isn't that
what does that
right?
mean?
Yeah.
Michael, you want to talk about that one? Because I mean, I know.
Yeah. So A to C is we do it for warm up too, sometimes before the game. So if I were to say right now, if I were to say to you, red, your next stop might be blue, or it might be yellow if you're thinking like traffic stop. Okay. So A to C is just taking your first original thought and taking it to the next level.
Like mine was sangria. When he said red, I thought sangria.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of just like a simple blue or yellow, red could take you to stop sign or Christmas or, just on and on and on. You're just taking your thought process to the next level.
Yeah. So not necessarily settling for that first like whim, you know what I mean? Like maybe there is something more, like to make it more interesting for the audience. Cause like if someone says red, you're like, and someone says like, like murder, you know what I mean? Like that made it more interesting. Who's murdered? Who got murdered? And yeah, so I think that's super beneficial in any aspect of life though. You know what I mean? I know you're not always like, let's make this conference call more exciting. You know what I mean? Like
sometimes I want to do that if it's depending on the conference call.
but I do feel like it's like even with dealing with clients, if someone tells you the things that they need, it's always like, instead of just, being like straight up like, oh, we have this, and this, it's like, okay, well, just listen to what they're saying. And then you move on and go, oh, I have this one thing that is perfect for you. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily like, here are the top 5 things that I think would fit kind of what you need. It's like, here's this number one thing that I absolutely would recommend for what you just told me.
Right.
And it like goes beyond that first instinct of going, buy now, and it kind of breaks down, makes it more personal, makes it more in like just person to person, authentic, like what you said, authentic.
I like that because, I was even in a conversation yesterday actually with Nancy, and as we're playing through it, she was having a tough time understanding some of our lingo, which is funny because she came from a marketing background, but she just didn't have some of the current lingo that we were talking about. And she's like, well, if I'm not understanding it, others might not. So that's one of the things we think about, is listening to what do they want to solve or what do they want to do, and giving them enough space to talk about that, and then piecing things off of that, which feels like improv to me, right? What you just described.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought you were talking about improv. Because I mean, it literally is. I mean, you're just starting a scene, and no matter who's on stage, you're literally just building brick by brick, what's going on in the scene, no matter how crazy it is.
Well, yeah, I think that's the coolest thing about it, because like, and like, I by no means am like saying that like anything is like better or worse, because like improv is just different. But I think one of the coolest things is like, we don't have sets, like we don't have costumes, props. We don't have props. I mean, that's not true, because there are a couple games that you like use props, like the game Props.
Oh yeah, that game.
Oh yeah, that one. But it was I think it's like super cool, because everything is just like Michael said, brick by brick. It's not 100% like all like, okay, this is where we're gonna start, and it's not even like outlined at all. It's literally someone was like, oh, what the end of that last scene, like something sparked in my head, and I need to do a scene about like a grandma baking cookies with their grandchildren. You know what I mean? But then things like that, and I think that's super cool. And I tend to lean more towards, I like long form a little bit better, but I'm like always like improv games, I'm totally cool to play. I love all of them. Like there's like we were planning out the show. We're like, been planning out the show for the past, few weeks and stuff. And we're just like he texted all of us, Michael texted in the group, was like, hey, here are all the games that we're going to be playing, like, let us know what you want to play. And I was like, honestly, I will play whichever game like fits. Like, I honestly don't care. I trust you guys. Like, just put me in whatever and I'll do it, you know, because it's improv. It's like the less you think, you just can't overthink.
Right.
You get stuck in overthinking, which is like in everything. It's like, oh, should I get 2% milk or should I get skim milk?
Right.
You know, what's the real difference?
That's I'm glad you brought up overthinking, because that's huge. And whenever people do come to stage and they're like, yeah, I have this character in mind that I want to do, I'm just like, well, forget about it. Like, don't walk on stage with like something in your head that you're trying to bring out, because that will throw you off completely the entire time.
Yeah, that's interesting. So get out of your head, basically, which is what we say in business. It's like, if you're playing too much in your head, you're not with the audience or the person that you're across from. So I'm sure the audience feels that as well, right? I would think.
Absolutely. And like, yeah, the audience can definitely tell if you have something scripted, because if he's a grandma baking cookies and I'm trying to be a Russian spy and I just walk in, like it doesn't really make sense if I had that like train of thought beforehand. But and then, like,
kind of want to see that played out now, but
I mean, anything can happen. But like my biggest thing with improv that you can kind of take to everyday life too is being comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are like scared to do that, or like might be in weird situations. And it just gets you out of your shell. I mean, obviously, if you're going to be a grandma or a Russian spy, so.
Yeah. So, or a robot.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite scenes. I'm not going to give it away.
We don't have to get too far into that one.
No, we're not going to go technical on that one.
That was a good one, though.
Yeah, that was a good one. But so back to the yes and, because, you know, I was sort of fascinated and I didn't even know that was a thing. And a lot of times I'll just say that and I didn't even know what I was saying. You know, like it's like both and, yes and all this other stuff. But can you guys, one of you maybe go into that, or both of you, however you want to do it, improv it?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, you know, yes and is pretty much just like that. What we had talked about with our like ritual is like, you know, whatever it is, I'm going to go with it. You know, it's
step up. Okay.
It's like constantly, it's like an agreement to constantly keep moving the scene and the timeline and everything forward, as opposed to it goes along with every other like fundamental rule, which is like getting out of your head. And like what Michael talked about was like not pre-planning those characters. So like whatever ideas you had pre-planned, you know, you take those and you just throw them in the garbage, because they're useless in improv, because all it is it's in the moment and it's like happening as it's happening. Like no one's seen it before and no one will ever see it again. So just focus on making it work, as opposed to trying to change it for your own benefit or your own desire. It's like, it's a collaborative effort to like make that happen.
The thing I have to add to that, which I agree with all of it. But yes and to the improv world is, if you're looking at it brick by brick, it's the first brick. Because if I were to start a scene with my grandma and I said, hey, grandma, make sure you throw white macadamias in there, and she says no, well, then the scene is dead. Like you can't really build anything off of it. So it's a lot about chemistry, and it's having like trust in your playing partner. Just knowing that they're, no matter what comes out of your mouth, they're going to agree with it and they're going to build onto it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Actually, I was laughing because Nancy, this is Nancy's book with a signature to, you know, Tom signed it to her, and he said, now this makes sense, because I was like, what does this mean? It's like, bring a brick, not a cathedral.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's improv.
That's super true. Yeah.
Because you never know what you're going to build, right? So just bring a brick. Everybody bring a brick.
Exactly. And it's also what he's saying there is, don't try to jump to anything insanely crazy. I tell our group, don't try and make funnies make sense, because if you do try and like be funny, then it almost it works backwards every single time, and it brings like a weird awkwardness to the scene. So if you're making sense in the scene, the funny will eventually come.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And Okay, yeah. And I was just thinking about this, was that like there are certain basic fundamental rules that they teach you like day one, like no questions and things like that.
What does that mean?
Like don't ask questions, because questions are not going to move that scene forward.
Like I just did?
No, I mean, well, because like you would kind of like hate it if it was just like, would you like to go to the park? When we get to the park, would you like to play Frisbee?
Right.
Should I bring my dog to the park with us? Are you cool if my girlfriend comes? You know what I mean? And it's just this constant. And if you saw it, like we were still sitting talking about doing the one thing that the scene just should have been about, was at the park with the dog and the girlfriend and him. Hey man, sorry I brought my girlfriend and my dog with. It was like all unplanned. I just didn't even mean to. Right. I just ran out and grabbed everything.
It's also in like considered in the improv world, it's considered lazy, because you're not being creative or you're doing anything. Pretty much all you're doing is saying, hey partner, hey scene partner, this is on you. Take care of this.
Oh yeah, you're okay. I got it.
But then there are some games that are like dating game, where it is just all questions, or party quirks, which like necessarily isn't questions, but like there is use for questions in there, so that it's the guessing games that are really rely on it, because you have to figure out what the other person is. It's the ones that you see on like Whose Line Is It Anyway and things like that.
Right. Well, it's ironic that we're talking about questions, because I mean, questions, they do happen in scenes, and it's not like they're absolutely banned from improv. It's just you can't keep throwing them out of your mouth.
Like don't use them as a crutch. Use them when they can make the scene go forward.
Exactly. And it's also funny because on Friday we'll be doing a game that's only questions. So
I figured I'd bring up the fact that there are some loopholes in the initial rules.
Right. Right.
Well, and it's interesting because, in sales, the main thing is let the prospect or the customer do all the talking. You're just really setting them up for success. And you'll use open-ended questions to move it along, but then it's almost like also be curious about the other person. So it's like you're listening, you're in sync. Sometimes you ask questions, and sometimes you're just helping them continue to build along, and what they're telling you. So that's cool.
Yeah. Another thing that's in the book that I feel is worth mentioning is like it talks about the 7 elements of improv. Yes, and ensemble, which means it's not an individual thing. It is the whole team, and it's everyone is constantly adding, constantly helping the scene grow and develop. And then
that's what every company is trying to get to, is they want synergy. They want that culture to be like, if someone drops something, someone else picks it up. And, it's just, there's always someone else chipping in and being there for each other. So,
yeah, which goes back to our last week's episode with Don Yeager. And he, talked about what makes teams great.
Right.
And then also with the Ben Zolden episode where he talked about being all in. Those are all aspects that deal on sports teams, in business, and then also in everyday life. That core team of people that you build around you all in for those people. It's a team. It's not. It's an ensemble of people that will take the shirt off of their back for the next person, because they're just committed and they're all in. And I think that's like one of the coolest things is, and it's not like everyone in the world is using improv. So it's like hard to feel that always in everyday life.
Right.
But when you're like doing improv and stuff, it's like one of the few places where I constantly feel like, oh, if I say something stupid, it'll be fine. Like I don't even have to worry about being like, like backing myself out of it, trying like digging myself deeper,
or going into your head,
or thinking about it. It's just like gets you out of that comfort zone. Like what Michael said, be comfortable not being comfortable.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
So yeah, and then it also talks about failure, which is like being comfortable, being able to fail. And I think that's a super cool one. That is like, even if it fails, We have one more scene after this. Like,
well, it's funny in leadership training. You did some of this with me, Jackson, but they celebrate making mistakes, and we do that here, where there's like, don't make the same critical mistakes over and over again, but it's okay. And Michael, I was thinking about the Air Force. It's like some mistakes are really big mistakes. So I wanted to ask you, like, in that. Is that the mindset in military? Because you came straight out of the Air Force, and then all of a sudden it's like you're in this sort of flexible, flowing world, and the military is so structured.
Right. So that's actually, like, I would say 80% of the reason why I got into improv. So when I was in Korea, I came home for a month, and I saw my first show at Second City, and I looked at my brother and I was like, I don't know why people wouldn't want to do anything else. Like, this looks absolutely amazing. And then I pretty much just talked about it for a year and a half. And so I was stationed in Colorado, and my mom flew out on business, and wanted to get lunch. Lo and behold, she had a little surprise, and we were driving around Denver, and she stopped at it looked like an abandoned building. And she was like, all right, you're getting kicked out of the car. And I was like, why? She's like, I signed you up for an improv class. And so that's how I got introduced to it. Fell in love with it ever since. And then, I started doing it because I found myself just kind of, if I went out to the bars, I wouldn't talk to anybody. I was like standing way too straight for being at a bar. So I did it to pretty much strengthen the opposite side of me. So, like, I guess I have a nice, solid, structured side, but then I'm also an idiot a lot of my time as well. So
and you're a funny idiot, just so you know.
Yeah. So I did it to, like, balance myself out in a way. And I think it's helped me tremendously.
Yeah. I agree completely, because, like, I mean, I've always enjoyed, like, making people laugh, because I feel like that's, like, the gateway to making people feel comfortable, you know what I mean, like, around me, you know what I mean? And I never wanted to be like, people are like, oh, don't invite that guy, he's awkward, you know what I mean? So I'm always like, like, making like stupid jokes that, like, hopefully at least one person will laugh at, and I'll be like, cool, we'll hang out for the rest of the night. You know what I mean? Like, and then
you're on my team.
Yeah. And then we, it's just like, it kind of, and then, like, once you look like an idiot and then you realize everyone's kind of cool with you looking like an idiot, you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then it's like, you can be stupid and you can mess up and you can do that. And you're like, well, what did you expect? But
I mean, so yes. So many people these days are just so scared to get out of their shell and, like, be really who they are, because they're worried about what other people are thinking about them.
Right. And it's funny you say that. We're in the business of building influence for people, helping them develop their digital influence. And when we're interviewing people, it's just, it's so amazing how many times people are afraid to to be authentic about their story, how to live into themselves, and how to be genuine and put it out there. And it feels like once you start doing that, it's almost freeing. It's like, oh, I'm not holding on to this while I'm talking and trying to listen to everybody.
Yeah. No, that's 100% accurate. And like, people are just, so scared to be authentic and really open with themselves on who they are, like, because it's just all about image nowadays. And so people are just really worried about what other people are going to be thinking about them.
Yeah, interesting. And go ahead, Jackson.
Well, and, like, even if you look at like celebrities, like, not all celebrities are good at like stopping and talking to fans. And I know, like, that gets exhausting and stuff. Right. But I'm just like it appalls me how some people are just like behind the camera, like in front of the camera, like reading a script. Like, a lot of them, like, are amazing, like, Academy Award winning actors. And then you have them talking to, like, normal people, and it's almost like a rigid kind of like, oh, this isn't scripted, I don't know what to say. And you can tell, you can definitely tell the people that are more authentic usually started in improv or have a background with some improv, because they're like, whatever happens, this is me, this is who I am. It's like, I'm not, like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's why I like those movies. Like, even with, like, Kevin Hart and The Rock and some of those movies, and, some of them aren't like mainstream Academy Award winning movies, but they're
Adam
entertaining.
Sandler movie.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But I mean, you can tell that they're improving, and the director's like, let's keep that, 'cause that was good.
Well, yeah, no, and I'm with Steve Carell. I'm also like the biggest Office fan ever.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've looked up like the amount of scenes in The Office that were improvised by Steve Carell or whatever, and like they just kept the camera rolling, and then it happened to be an amazing scene. Like for instance, when Michael kissed Oscar, for the Office fans out there, that was improvised, and a lot of people don't know that, and it happened to be such an iconic scene. And then it goes with we were talking about like failure earlier, and failure is such a strong word, and when people like fail at something, they don't acknowledge that they learn from it as well.
Right.
And so like that's such a huge aspect, especially with improv too. Like if you do a scene and it goes awfully wrong, well, it's like, well, why did it go wrong? And then you get that stuck in your head forever because you don't want to go through that again.
Well, and talking about very funny, I wouldn't say classic, but like, scenes that were funny and left in the movie that like weren't planned, were improvised to some extent. Like the movie Grandma's Boy was one of the guy that plays Dante, and he's in a bunch of like Adam Sandler movies and like that group. And he was like, he had to sit there and smoke weed on camera, but they gave him like the Hollywood weed, like the fake stuff. Right. And he was like, this is bullshit, man. Like, I'm not going to smoke fake weed. Like, that's dumb. I have a bag in my car. So he goes and he gets this big bag of weed from his car and he starts packing bong hits. And then they did like 20 takes of the scene. And then they cut, and he looks at, like, I think it was Nick Swartzen, and he looks at him and goes, hey, man, I can't feel my legs right now. Someone's got to drive me to the hospital. Like, and it was one of those where he was like, this is awesome. This is going to be better. It's going to be more authentic and all this stuff. And then he was like, hey, man, I can't feel my legs right now. Like, have the monkey drive me, because there's a monkey in the movie. Just great, I'll like Tommy Boy, like anything Chris Farley did, I'm almost positive they never handed him a script.
Right, like, that's what I was gonna say. And even Belushi too, though.
Oh yeah, so. I mean, but Belushi and Farley were a lot of physical, like the stuff that they would add would be like falling over and breaking tables and like
almost to the point of the next level of slapstick, where
like with the eyebrow with Belushi and all that stuff. So I think there's different ways where like they like improvisers, I feel aren't afraid to play with the line a little bit more than
yeah, and I think top salespeople and top executives, I'll put it out there, top people in business that seem to progress, they always go, oh, you can think well on your feet. Well, you're really just playing off of the scene or the situation or reacting, and doing that. And one thing I want to make sure we cover, Michael, and I was thinking about rugby when I read this, was follow the follower.
Yeah.
And the reason is, because it says it gives any member of the group the chance to assume a leadership role, which I was like, while in rugby, I mentioned this in the beginning, is like everyone has a chance to be the star. Where in football, it's like, oh, it's all about the quarterback or whoever, and so you've got these individual stars, but really, follow the follower feels like. So can you dig into that a tiny bit?
Yeah. So like to me, follow the follower, to me, if you're watching a show and this an improv show and this person specifically ensemble has like backed them up completely and set them up for the huge success. So if you're following the following or if you're following the follower, you're yes-anding them. But yeah, and you're also setting them up and yourself for success in the scene.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that. I agree with all that. Like essentially, I think like the biggest rule in like if you had to sum it up into one rule, all of the rules and the elements would just be like, be there for your team 100% of the time. No ifs, ands, or buts. Like there's no loophole around it. You're there and you support them and you make everyone look good 100% of the time.
Yeah, that's excellent. Jackson, in fact, I want you to bring that into our team meeting on Friday, if you would. So that exact thing, because I think that's a lesson all of us can have, whether it's family, whether it's our business, whether we're in a work environment. And what's interesting is many people feel like they don't have control. And I think, Michael, that's where the fear comes from, where they feel like they can't be authentic. And I always say that if you feel that way anywhere, then if you feel like you can't flow or you can't, make mistakes, and like I said, our rule is you can make mistakes, just don't make them repetitive. Let's fix them or create a system to fix them.
Right.
And I think far too many times we're put in this box where it's not okay to be bad, to make mistakes, whatever it is, and then it keeps us from the best part of ourselves.
No, yeah, I 100% agree. When people are scared to take that extra leap or that extra jump, then they're just stuck in this little box. And I mean, you won't ever see their true potential.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I agree completely. Is like that failure helps everyone grow. You know what I mean? That thing that you messed up on, that's, even if it could be the smallest mistake, but as long as you learn from it and constantly keep growing and keep improving on your skill set, whatever it may be, if it's marketing, if it's, finance, let's hope you didn't make a huge mistake with someone's financial situation. You know what I mean? That would be awful. But just like any of those things, like whatever the mistake is, as long as you're constantly growing from it and you're learning from it and you can say, I'm better because of it. Like, that's the most important thing. As long as it's a constant, you're constantly learning, constantly growing. Like, I mean, I'll get off the stage every time we do a performance or come out of a rehearsal and be like, I feel better because, one of us gave a note to someone or like even someone gave a note to me and it helped me see the mistake I was making, and why I felt like the scene wasn't working was because I was unable to do, X, Y, and Z. And I just need to, focus on the fact that, okay, I didn't get out of my head all this stuff. I was overthinking it. And then once you're more conscious of like, okay, don't overthink it. And then you're like, you just jump out and say whatever. And right. I mean, as long as it makes sense, it's not like just gibberish. We don't just scream random words at each other. Yeah. So, I mean, we're getting pretty close to time, but.
Yeah. And I was going to say your website is twistedlimechicago.com, right?
Right. And we have 2 upcoming shows this Friday, November 8th, and then November 15th at 10:30 p.m. in Donnie's Skybox. And if you go to twistedlimechicago.com, you can, there's links to get tickets on there. You can get them at the door if they don't sell out. And then you can also go to our Facebook page. We have Facebook events. You can buy the tickets right in there. So, that's what
go ahead.
I was just going to say they are $13. So
wow. Is that for front row?
That's all row. Yeah.
All rows.
Yeah. That's the coolest thing is actually, it's not a specific ticket seating. It's actually, you can sit wherever you want. That's what the $13 gets you. It's pretty
there's no obstructed view unless, of course, you sit on the floor, right? So
correct, yeah. But I mean, other than that, it's still not even that obstructed. No, I mean, right. But yeah. and there's drinks, so come have some drinks.
There's plenty of those. Actually, yeah. I heard, Jackson, you were buying if anybody comes, that's on this show today.
I heard that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see how I feel on Friday. But yeah, so if you, we usually meet at Old Town Ale House after the show as well. So that's always a popular spot for after Second City show, Ale House. And then
those of you not in Chicago, watch for social media updates.
Yes. And then, so definitely come check us out if you like to laugh or if that's your thing. Even if you don't like to laugh, maybe you didn't know you like to laugh and you're going to discover a new thing. It'll be pretty cool.
And sometimes before the show, we meet at 1871. Do I have it right?
No, he never. Okay. It's 1959. He always gets the one, right? That's.
I was wondering what the hell he was talking about.
It's the only bar. Is it on the second floor?
Yeah. It's second or third. Yeah. Second.
See, I don't even know
second.
a word. Yeah, I just
Second
know.
floor.
I can hear it. That's all. When I walk in the building, I can hear it. So what's interesting, what I always like about Second City too, is there's like, it feels like there's 9 different stages. Is that too many? I mean, how many are there? Because there's like little cubby holes with stages. And
There, I want to say it's close to, if it's not 9, it's around there. It's 8 or 10. Like it's super in that ballpark.
Yeah, that's what I always liked about it. Because like you said, well, it's $13 to go to this one. It's $10 to go to this one. It's whatever. But they're only really an hour long. You get time to be social. And if you want, you can go to another one, so.
Yeah. And I think like the coolest thing is like, if you do like decide that you take a class through like Improv Olympic even, or Second City Annoyance, you get like a card that allows you to get into like a lot of like, if it's another student show, then you get in for free. And I think that's super cool because that shows you a bunch of other stuff. You get to like learn from other people's mistakes at that point. Right. I think that's super cool as well. So it kind of gets you to see other people and how it's going. And then you can get discounted tickets to certain, like shows. I think you have to call ahead for main stage. It's like, it's super, like a lot of times main stage you don't get too much leeway on that one. But I mean, main stage is always good because it shows you like, okay, these people have at least, made it in Chicago. Right. And that's like, so you get to see what it's like to see an actual group working on main stage in Chicago. And I think that's super cool as well, because it shows you like, okay, like, yeah. And then you like, as an improviser, I'm always watching like, that was like slightly like, that was a mess up, but like, that's cool. And like knowing that other groups mess up sometimes, like that's another big thing that it shows you is like, no one's perfect and improv will never be perfect.
Right.
And I think that's the best part about it.
That's the blessing right there.
Yeah, so it's definitely one of the coolest parts.
All right. Well, I want to thank our live audience today for tuning in. And those of you listening to the podcast, thanks for downloading the podcast. And Michael, thanks for taking tremendous time out of your schedule. And I always enjoy you guys on stage. And Jackson, thanks for sharing your learn and then helping me bridge to the business side. We're looking at, I think I mentioned earlier, we're looking at working some more improv into our workshops as we help people with storytelling. And it just seems like such a great parallel to have this as part of what we do as well, in the business world.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate you having me. I think a lot of people don't understand how much they improvise just on a daily basis. And it's super crazy because people come up to me all the time. Oh, I couldn't do improv. It's like, well, you probably did it today 35 times.
Yeah. And I agree with that completely because there's so many times where I'm like, oh, I'm constantly improvising. Like I never plan out what I'm going to say ever. You know what I mean? Like there's like, I mean, obviously for like when I give a presentation or something, I have speaking points, but I never run through it because I do it all based on the audience. Like if the audience is liking something different, then I can be like, all right, well, we're going to skip through this because I feel like this is going to be more beneficial to this audience. So I feel like as a speaker, improv is phenomenal. Or if someone asks a question that I hadn't, like is a little off topic, but I have to figure out how to phrase it, I can actually fill like a minute of time just like talking and being like, oh, cool. Like, tell me a little bit more about what you're doing while I think about this. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure. And Michael, you're going to be a teacher. So, I mean, just think how beneficial it's going to be to play off of that class, no matter what age it is.
Those kids are screwed. They have no idea what they're getting ready for.
Like I said, I wish I had a lot of more improv with my teachers. So some of them were too scripted.
I always thought about, because my grandparents were teachers. I work with teachers. I work in schools. Doing audio technicians for shows and stuff like that. But I am like, someone once was like, hey, I think you'd be a good teacher because you're like, fun and you can relate to the kids and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, but I would feel so bad if like America's education system just declined rapidly as soon as I started teaching. And like no one is a productive member of society. And I've been like, oh, well, and I would really take that and be like, that one was on me. I'm sorry. That's my bad. And like,
Right.
that's like one of my biggest reasons I never like actually did that. But if you want to follow us or engage with us after the fact, we're Twisted Lime Shy, CHI on Twitter. And then we are Twisted Lime Chicago on Facebook and Instagram and on YouTube. And all the logos are the same on everything, so you'll know which one it is. And also, you can tweet to me after the fact if it's Social Jack related at Jackson DeLisle. And then at Dean DeLisle, if you have any suggestions for guests we should have or anything like that. If you want to listen to this podcast after the fact, it'll be on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Spotify, and CastBox, and also on YouTube. So, we'll get those up, and then make sure to check out the show this Friday and next Friday. Tickets are on the website if you're and you're in Chicago. If not, we upload recordings of our shows to YouTube, so you can subscribe and get all that. And also subscribe to the Social Jack channel, which allows you to get updates when we upload new episodes of the podcast, when we interview interesting guests such as Twisted Lime Chicago or any of the other ones.
Self-promotion.
Like yeah, whatever. Well, I mean, I'm on that's like my biggest thing is like there was like, you should never plug your own stuff. And I was like, but it's like also the podcast that I'm a co-host on. So I'm like so conflicted right now.
It's okay,
I'm gonna go
man.
cry.
Anything goes. Your dad might produce it, so it's okay. So. All right. Well, listen, thank you everybody out there that's listening. And thank you, Michael and Jackson, for sharing the crossover of improv, business, and life. I love it. And then can't wait to see your upcoming shows and to see more from you. And I do know that you're getting interest from the business world to come into there too. So continue teaching us all about improv and doing your thing. So thanks again. And thanks to all of you out there. And great show. And we will see you online. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Influence Factory podcast. We welcome feedback and suggestions. You can provide these by visiting our website at www.myinfluencefactory.com. And if you are interested in Social Jack's 90 Days to Influence program, you can simply go to 90daystobusinessinfluence.com and simply ask for the next steps. While our program airs regularly on Zoom webcasts and Facebook Live on Wednesdays at noon Central, we invite you to download episodes on your favorite channel: YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and who knows where else in the future. We will also provide occasional on-location live streams with special guests that we will announce in our community Facebook group, Business Influencer Alliance, as well as on all Social Jack channels. Our mission is to help you build your digital business influence with this podcast, as well as inspire, educate, and entertain those who are hungry to collaborate in a cool place with cool business professionals just like you.